In the old Italian city of Perugia on November 1st, 2007, lively 21-year-old exchange student Meredith Kercher from the UK was getting used to her new life abroad. But on a seemingly mundane evening, Meredith's usual routine would be entirely disrupted by a terrifying incident that would capture global attention for a long time. But why? Because Meredith was found dead in her apartment in a brutal manner, sparking a high-profile investigation. In what way could a bright young woman go through such a destiny in a peaceful college town? What truly occurred behind the closed doors on that evening? Would justice ever be properly achieved for Meredith Kercher? But most importantly, it is the people who you least expect who betray you the most. So grab yourself a cup of courage as we explore the murder Meredith Kercher in Perugia, a story that unravels like a tangled web of suspicion, deceit, and hopefully justice. But before that, this channel is all about true crime, brutal stories, and chilling mysteries. So if that is something that interests you, please consider subscribing to support us so you can doom scroll crime every week. Meredith Kercher is found brutally murdered and stabbed in the neck. However, what makes this tragic case more interesting is that till date we aren't any closer to finding her real killer. What happened in those final moments? And who all are involved? Let's delve deeper, but before that, let's get to know about Meredith Kercher. Meredith Susanna Cara Kercher, born on December 28, 1985 in Southwark, South London, nicknamed Mez by her friends, resided in Coulsdon, South London. Her education took place at the Old Palace School in Croydon. After a school exchange trip ignited her passion for Italy's language and culture, she eagerly returned at 15 to spend her summer vacation with a family in Sessa Arunca. Kercher researched European politics and Italian while attending the University of Leeds. In 2004, she took on roles as a barmaid, tour guide, and promotional worker to sustain herself, and also had a brief appearance in Christian Leontaiou's music video for Some Say. Her goal was to pursue a career in the European Union or in journalism. In October 2007, she enrolled at the University of Perugia, and her classmates later characterized her as affectionate, smart, humorous, and well-liked. Kercher lived in a 4-bedroom ground-floor apartment in a house cottage on Via della Pergola, 7 in the city. Locals considered it a bad neighborhood, with drug dealers lingering at the nearby basketball court. Filomena Romanelli and Laura Mazzetti, who were in their late 20s, shared the apartment with Amanda Knox, a 20-year-old American exchange student in Italy for a year. Kercher settled in on the 10th of September 2007, while Knox settled in on the 20th of September, meeting each other for the first time. Knox was employed part-time at a bar, Le Chic, which was owned by Dia Patrick Lumumba. Kercher's English female friends saw relatively little of Knox, who preferred to socialize with Italians. Kercher regularly phoned her mom every day using her mobile phone. The bottom floor of the residence was shared by 4 Italian men who were friends with both Kercher and Knox. While these 2 girls were away from their home one late night in the middle of October and arrived back by 2 a.m., they met Rudy Guede. Guede had been welcomed by some Italian occupants to the apartment on the lower floor. The girls participated in the Euro Chocolate Festival in the middle of October as they went to a classical music concert, where Knox encountered Raffaele Solicito, a 23-year-old student studying computer science at the University of Perugia, and Knox and Solicito started dating. On November 1st, All Saints' Day, Italy observed a public holiday. Kercher's Italian roommates, as well as the people living downstairs, were away. So she had dinner with 3 English women at one of their houses that night. She said goodbye to a friend at around 8:45 p.m., approximately 500 yards away from Via della Pergola 7. Knox claimed she stayed over at Solicito's place and went back to Via della Pergola 7 the next morning on the 2nd of November 2007. She discovered that the front door was unlocked. Blood drops were found in the bathroom that she and Kercher used together. Knox assumed Kercher was asleep because her bedroom door was locked. Knox showered in the bathroom they shared with Kercher. She discovered feces in the restroom of Romanelli and Mazzetti. She went back to Solicito's residence and afterward went back with him to Via della Pergola 7. Solicito observed a shattered window in Romanelli's bedroom. He became worried when Kercher didn't respond to her door and attempted, but failed to break it down. So he dialed the emergency number 112. Romanelli got to the apartment following a phone call from Knox and accidentally disrupted the scene of the crime while searching for missing items, as she found Kercher's 2 phones in a garden nearby, which caused her to worry. She requested for the police to break open Kercher's bedroom door, but they refused. Around 1:15 p.m., Romanelli's male companion managed to push the door open. Kercher's body was discovered on the floor. On the 2nd of November 2007, Meredith Kercher's body was found in her bedroom, on the floor, partially covered by a duvet. She had been stabbed multiple times and her throat was cut. The forensic examination of the crime scene revealed that there had been a struggle before her death. Additionally, there were signs of forced entry, indicating that the killer had broken into the apartment. However, there were also indications that the crime scene was staged, leading investigators to suspect that the killer was someone who knew the victim and had been in the apartment before. The autopsy revealed that Kercher died from a combination of suffocation and knife wounds. Her injuries consisted of 47 bruises. She was sexually assaulted and suffered multiple stab wounds on her neck and chest. The forensic examination also revealed traces of Kercher's blood on a knife found in Raffaele Solicito's apartment, as well as traces of Knox's and Solicito's DNA on the handle of the knife. So what happened between Kercher, Knox, and boyfriend? Was it planned or in the heat of the moment? Following a night of grueling interrogations, on November 6, 2007, Knox signed a confession in which she admitted to being in another room of their residence while her Le Chic boss, Dia Patrick Lumumba, killed her roommate. Along with the confession, Knox and Solicito's problems were complicated by their changing accounts of the night in question. At first, they claimed they were together all night, then they said they were apart for a few hours, followed by statements that they couldn't remember. In the murder's aftermath, they went lingerie shopping, which some viewed as a display of their seemingly carefree attitudes. On November 15, 2007, an incriminating kitchen knife was reported to have been found at Solicito's home. The 8-inch knife had traces of Kercher's DNA on the blade and Knox's DNA on the handle. Solicito later wrote that he had once accidentally pricked Kercher's hand while the three of them were cooking. Then, on November 20th, 2007, Rudy Gued was pulled from a train in Germany after investigators found his DNA on bloody prints at the crime scene and inside Kercher's body. Gued claimed that he and Kercher had engaged in kissing and touching, but they did not have sex because they lacked easy access to condoms. He stated that he subsequently experienced stomach aches and walked over to the spacious bathroom located on the opposite side of the apartment. He also heard Kercher scream as he was in the bathroom, and when he came out, he saw a shadowy figure with a knife standing over her while she was bleeding on the floor. He said the man looked at him and said out loud to someone else, "Trovato negro, trovato colpevole, andiamo," which roughly translates to, "We have got a black man, so we have got a culprit. Let's go." The man then left the scene as he ran away and caused Gued to also flee in panic. The court determined that his account of what happened did not align with the scientific proof, and he was unable to clarify how one of his palm prints, tainted with Kercher's blood, was discovered on the pillow beneath the undressed body in the single bed. Guede claimed he had departed with Kercher fully clothed. Initially, Guede claimed that Knox was not present during the crime. However, he later changed his account to suggest that she was in the apartment during the murder. He stated that he had listened to her having a disagreement with Kercher and then looked out of a window where he saw the silhouette of Knox outside the house. Meanwhile, Lumumba was released from custody, though he remained a suspect. It is also important to note Guede's criminal record, as he had allegedly committed break-ins, including one of a lawyer's office through a second-floor window, and another during which he burgled a flat and brandished a pocket knife when confronted by its residents. On November 20th, 2007, Lumumba was released after 2 weeks in prison when his alibi was corroborated. He spent the night of the killing talking to a customer in his pub in Perugia, police said. He later sued Knox for libel and won €40,000, $54,000, in damages. Italian prosecutors formally charged Knox, Guede, and Solicito with murder. Guede fled to Germany shortly after the murder. During a November 19, 2007 Skype conversation with his friend, Guede did not mention Knox or Solicito as being in the building on the night of the murder. Later, his account changed, and he indirectly implicated them in the murder, which he denied involvement in. Guede was arrested in Germany on November 20th, then sent to Italy on December 6th. On September 6, 2008, Guede asked for a separate fast-track trial, an option available under Italian law that speeds up the judicial process by waiving a number of a defendant's legal rights in exchange for a reduction in sentence if found guilty. Guede feared that Knox and Solicito had formed a pact against him. His defense attorney said, In recent weeks, a lot of poison has been spread by the defense teams, and we feel the necessity to find some form of serenity in a separate hearing. He was not charged with having had a knife. He did not testify and was not questioned about his statements, which he had changed compared to what he originally said. In October 2008, Gwed was found guilty of the sexual assault and murder of Kercher and sentenced to 30 years imprisonment. His prison sentence was ultimately reduced to 16 years. He was later given an early release in December 2020 and authorized to finish his sentence with community service. Knox was dissatisfied with his early release and spoke publicly against it. Despite DNA evidence which linked Gwede to the scene and barely any pointing to Knox or Solicito, prosecutors weren't satisfied with a single conviction. They had substituted Gwede in for Lumumba in their initial theories and were alleging that the three had carried out the killing together in a sex game gone wrong. In the lead-up to the trial, a trove of information about the case had already been provided to journalists, including crime scene photos, a diary Knox kept while in prison, and details of several one-night stands she had had before meeting Solicito. A photo of the bathroom in which Knox showered before calling the police, which appeared to show it drenched in blood, was published without an accompanying explanation that it was taken after police had sprayed the bathroom with a blood detection chemical that turns pink after a certain period of time, whether blood is present or not. Local and international media also ran CCTV stills of Knox and Solicito shopping in the days following the murder, chosen to show the brief moments in which they smiled or laughed with each other. A leaked witness statement that described the pair buying G-strings and talking about going home to have wild sex turned out to have been provided by a shop owner who spoke little English, and a US journalist who visited the shop in question reported it didn't sell the type of items he described. Meanwhile, journalists scoured Knox's online profiles for information, unearthing a picture of her posing with a vintage machine gun at a museum that she had uploaded to her MySpace page. They also discovered her tongue-in-cheek nickname, Foxy Knoxy, originally given to her by her youth soccer team, and it soon began appearing in headlines across the British press. By the time the trial began, Knox had been publicly portrayed as a promiscuous libertine, motivated by extreme thrills and sexual conquests, who was simultaneously cold, calculating, and indifferent to the suffering of others. Media interest in the case was intense, and prosecutors were determined not to disappoint. And so they laid out a spicy story in which Knox, Solicito, and Gwede had been high on drugs and engaging in a sex game on the night of the murder. An earlier theory that they had been taking part in an occult ritual was abandoned during the trial. According to them, when Kercher refused to take part in the game, prosecutors said, Knox and Solicito held her down while Gwed raped her. Knox then took a knife and inflicted the fatal wounds, they said, before staging a burglary to cover their tracks. The pair's defense lawyers, on the other hand, pointed to the near-total lack of forensic evidence linking Knox and Solicito to the murder. No fingerprints, clothing fibers, hairs, or skin cells from the pair were found at the scene, despite the close-quarters nature of the murder prosecutors had described and the wealth of DNA evidence that pointed to Gwed. A knife taken from Solicito's kitchen drawer, with both Knox's and Kercher's DNA on it, was determined by police to be the murder weapon, but forensic experts raised questions about whether it fit the profile given the size of Kercher's wounds, and raised the possibility of contamination, given the small amount of DNA involved. A trace amount of Solicito's DNA found on Kercher's bra clasp was similarly discounted by his defense team, who questioned how his DNA could have ended up on the clasp but not on the bra strap or anywhere else at the scene. In Knox's case, rather than a murderer who was seeking sexual thrills, her lawyers painted a picture of a naive young woman who had raised the alarm, cooperated with investigators, and gave a false statement only after hours of questioning in a language in which she was not yet fluent. Knox testified that during police interrogations, she was confused and that interrogators pressured her, called her a stupid liar, and hit her in the head. Officials have denied beating Knox. She also said that some of her actions that made her look bad when described by the press were taken the wrong way. She added that she was in shock after the murder, and that caused her strange behavior. They also pointed out that Knox had been friendly with Kercher, and highlighted the lack of any prior communications between Gwede and the couple on trial. Despite the absence of hard evidence linking them to the crime, Knox and Solicito were convicted of murder and sexual violence in 2009 and sentenced to 26 and 25 years in prison, respectively. Knox was also convicted of staging a break-in at the apartment, as well as slander, in a separate but simultaneous trial for her false accusation against Lumumba. Knox, Solicito, and Guede were ordered to pay €1 million, $1.5 million, each to each of Kercher's parents, as well as €800,000 to each of her siblings. Knox and Solicito spent a total of 4 years in prison, where Knox was reportedly so scared during her first night that she had to be held by the female prison guards. "I want you to know that I'm okay because I'm not dead inside, I promise, and I don't want you to be dead inside," she wrote to her mother from Kapane prison. She later described experiencing an epiphany that allowed her to move past that fear and begin to focus on fighting her conviction. "I was a prisoner, and prison was my home." In November 2010, Knox and Solicito's case came before the Corte d'Assise d'Appello, or appellate court, a standard practice in Italy in which lower court verdicts are assessed in what is essentially a second trial. During the hearing, 2 prison inmates told the court that Guede had admitted to them that Knox was not involved in the killing. Almost a year later, in October 2011, Knox and Solicito's murder convictions were overturned and the pair were acquitted, an exonerating verdict in the Italian legal system, distinct from a finding that the case simply hasn't been proven. The judge poured scorn on the prosecution's case, citing glaring errors in the gathering and analysis of evidence, the lengthy and problematic nature of the interrogations, and credibility problems with a witness who had placed Knox and Solicito near the scene. After a review of the DNA evidence, he concluded the scientific tests conducted on Solicito's kitchen knife were far below international standards, and the discovery of Solicito's DNA on Kercher's bra clasp was the result of contamination. Given investigators had worn the same latex gloves to touch Kercher's door handle and Kercher's clothes on the ground, Knox and Solicito were released from custody, and Knox immediately flew home to her parents in Seattle. However, the nightmare for Knox didn't end as prosecutors were able to appeal, and the team prosecuting Knox and Solicito did so immediately. In 2013, Italy's highest court overturned acquittal of Knox and Solicito and ordered a retrial on the basis that the judge failed to order new DNA tests or adequately consider the circumstantial evidence against Knox, such as her false accusation against Lumumba. The retrial, carried out in Knox's absence at a Florentine appeals court, returned guilty verdicts against the pair in 2014 and saw Knox's sentence increase to 28 years and 6 months. Knox, still in the US, said the verdict was unjust, the result of a prejudiced and narrow-minded investigation. "Having been found innocent before, I expected better from the Italian justice system," she said. Solicito, meanwhile, was barred from leaving Italy until the appeals process exhausted itself. Though he always maintained Knox was innocent, he had sought a separate retrial from his former partner on the basis that Knox's false statement to police, if a court held it to be true, did not place him at the scene. Soon after the second guilty verdict, he was detained by police at a hotel near the border with Austria, though he denied trying to leave the country. In lodging their final appeal, Knox and Solicito returned to the Corte Suprema di Cassazione, whose verdicts cannot be appealed. It was the 5th time a court would pore over the details of the case, almost 8 years after the murder took place. In a sweeping decision, a 5-judge panel ruled that the pair could not possibly have taken part in the murder due to the lack of any biological traces of them in Kercher's room or on her body. The court said there had been stunning flaws in the police investigation at every stage, partly due to the pressure of the international media spotlight and prosecutors' resultant desperation to secure a conviction. Italy's highest court had spoken, and there were no more moves the prosecution could make. "Meredith was my friend," Knox said. "She deserved so much in this life." Notably, the 2015 acquittal came with one last barb for Knox, with the court upholding her original conviction for slander regarding her false statement against Lumumba. The following year, she was acquitted of a further defamation charge for saying policewomen had struck her during her questioning. In the years following her acquittal, Knox has become an author, journalist, and a champion of the wrongly convicted. In 2019, the European Court of Human Rights ordered the Italian government to pay Knox €18,400 for violating her rights in the hours after her arrest by not providing her with a lawyer or a competent interpreter. Based on that ruling, Knox later appealed her conviction for slander, seeking to overturn the last remaining stain on her name in the Italian legal system. The Corte Suprema di Cassazione granted her a retrial in 2023, But on Wednesday, in the same Florentine courtroom where she was reconvicted of murder, she was found guilty once more. She showed no visible emotion as the verdict was read out, but later vowed to continue to fight for the truth and appeal the ruling, ensuring her legal saga will continue. The police threatened me with 30 years in prison. An officer slapped me 3 times saying, "Remember, remember," Knox said in court about her false statement incriminating Lumumba. "I hope to clear my name once and for all of the false charges against me. Wish me luck." I didn't know who the murderer was. I had no way to know. Thanks for watching. The murder of Meredith Kercher leaves us with more questions than answers. The confusing evidence, the conflicting testimonies, and the lingering uncertainty that haunts everyone still searching for the truth. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more detailed dives into true crime mysteries. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time.